Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Broken Brand. And it looks like we are getting a new installment of Final Destination. Now, it's been quite a while since we've had a Final Destination movie, and honestly, I watched the first two or three. I don't think I saw four or five, but that first one still sticks with me today. Those of us that saw it in theaters, right around in high school, I mean, that terrified us from ever being behind a semi. For years, it always terrified me until I actually had an accident involving a semi that nearly killed me and my fiance at the time. So it rattles me to this day being around semis, which is funny because now I am in the habit of doing long road trips during the summer with me and my kids. So that fear just sits in there, and that fear was installed by Final Destination. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, go watch the first one and you'll never stay behind a semi ever again, especially if they're hauling stuff that is not in an enclosed trailer. Now, I think the Final Destination movies, the ones I've seen, were good. And this article says it's sci-fi horror. I wouldn't put in sci-fi horror. I'd put in supernatural horror. Um, Sci-fi horror is has a sci-fi element, and this is about death and being an actual entity trying to collect what he's owed for people who escaped death. Now, you can argue with that, but when I think sci-fi horror, heck, when I think sci-fi supernatural horror, which is what I think they're trying to say here without actually saying it, I think of the wonderful movie that I still love. People hate it because it's hard to watch, but it's still one of my favorite all-time horror movies, The Event Horizon. No, Event Horizon. The ship is called The Event Horizon. And that is sci-fi horror. Now, not everyone's a big horror fan, and Event Horizon was, to put it bluntly, was gory. And yeah, it's not for everybody, but it was an incredible dive into supernatural, sci-fi, horror, existential. It was good. It was well written, well executed, and Final Destination is similar, but I wouldn't call it sci-fi. It's not. It's supernatural horror, and it does dive into that existential philosophy of, is death real? Is death an actual entity? And things like that, which we all know with common sense, death is not an entity. It is a state of being. So, but death as an entity has been around for centuries in various religions, philosophical beliefs, and things like that. The actual embodiment of death can be found various places throughout history. So, them taking that and running with it was really cool, really interesting, really intriguing. The fact that it went for five movies was mind blowing. The second one I remember being good. Not great, not as good as the first one, but it was good. And the third one was, yeah, I'm kind of tired of this premise, so I never saw any of the others. But we're getting another one. So, I mean, let's take a quick look at it real quick. And it's going to be called Bloodlines. And they've known some of the cast. So we've got Breck Basinger, Tio Brions, Caitlin Santawana, Richard Harmon, Anna Laura Owen Patrick Joyner, Max Lloyd Jones, Rhea Kilstedt, and Timpo Lee. Now, I never saw Stargirl. It's been on one of my watch lists, but it just seems so cartoony that I never watched it. I know it was a CW one, and there's probably a good show. A lot of people said it's really good, but it just seems so very cartoony. I never watched it, so I don't know if she's a good actress. And Theo Brion's, um, I recognize him from The Flash. I never finished Flash or Green Arrow, which I do hate that I never finished it because I loved Green Arrow. It just got to the point where I lost track of it between seasons and just never finished picking it up. So, and we've got a few more actors. But here's where we got the Spider-Man director going to be directing it, and that's cool. So it's going to be probably very, very lively in its scenes of quote unquote death, trying to get back the actors and actresses that escaped it. But I'm going to read the premise here, and it seems a little. Well, let's just read it, and you can decide for yourselves. Final Destination Bloodline follows recent high school graduate Stephanie, who begins having nightmares about dying in a 1960s tower accident before leaving for college. But she learns that her dream actually happened to her grandmother, who was able to avoid death until her 80s instead of dying in the accident. Now, Death has decided to go after the would be victims of that 1960s disaster by killing them and their children, unless Stephanie can figure out a way to stop it. Not sold on this one. Here's why. I don't know what they did in 4 and 5, but I mean, there was direct correlation. They, a group of people, escaped an event that would have taken their lives, and death eventually comes for them and makes everything quote unquote right with the natural order. Well, this is weird. It gives death a more what's the word for that? A more defined existence and need for balance. So he couldn't get her grandmother for whatever reason. Now she's going now Death is going after her granddaughter. Didn't mention the mother. So that's got me wondering. So that's kind of a weird thing. And this whole taking death by the bloodline, I guess the philosophy behind it, if that person was supposed to die back in 1960, that none of their descendants should be alive today, and that's what they're going for here. Seems a bit weird based on what I remember of the first two movies. And honestly, I don't know. It could be good, but honestly, based on the summary, even though Final Destination 1 has a special place in my heart for striking fear into me about semi trucks, I literally don't know if I would go to the theater to see this. I'll probably catch it on streaming. If this went straight to a streaming service, yeah, definitely watch it the day it comes out. Going to the theater, that's a bit much for me. It just, nothing about this summary, the fact that we have a huge gap, sends a warning because everyone's trying to develop properties that made money in the past instead of trying something new. And guess what? We're kind of getting tired of it. And Hollywood just doesn't seem to catch on that we're tired of the same thing over and over and over again. So I don't know what to do about that except say, try something different. We've got 5 Final Destination movies. That's a lot. We've got like what, Scream 7 coming out now? Granted, the first Scream, phenomenal. Loved it. And we're everybody that I know that really enjoys horror movie is still really upset how they ended the Halloween franchise. I'm upset how they ended the Halloween franchise, and I'm not even that big of a fan. I just thought I liked the story and I liked to see where they're kind of taking it, but they did some weird stuff throughout the series and ended it really weird. And this is that same vibe it gives me that this this is going to be a final movie or a farewell movie to the Final Destination franchise with a whole new cast and everything, but still this may be the final one, the final destination, because honestly, nothing about this screams I gotta watch this. Yes, it's got a lot of young actors and actresses in it because that's kind of the premise of the movie, of all the movies. It's these young kids that avoid these natural disasters and things like that. But there's no star power drawing me into it. There's the summary's not drawing me into it, and I'm not going to go see it just because it's Final Destination. I mean, they didn't get me out to see five, so unlikely I'm going to see this one. So let me know. To all my horror fans out there, tell me, is this something you really want? Is this something you're definitely going to go see in the theaters? Because honestly, I don't know if I want to. I'm just being honest. I'm not saying it's a bad movie. I'm saying it's a weird premise based on the franchise, and this may be the final one because I think this one's going to flop based on its premise. If they stuck to the original format and not this descendants of someone who escaped death, I get where they're going with it, but that's not what made the first few movies great. There's absolute threat of disaster there. So, I don't know. We're just going to have to see how this turns out. And it probably means that, yeah, after Easter weekend, I'm going to have to do a final destination marathon, find out where they're streaming, or just rent them somewhere off a streaming platform and watch them. Just because it's been a while. It's been a minute, and the first one was good. I'm not going to lie. So, let me know your thoughts down below. Click a like. Please subscribe. I'm trying to hit 100 before the end of summer. So, until next time, my friends, as always, I love you all, and there's nothing you can do about it.